Hi, welcome to this video. We're going to develop now exercises 1 to 5 of chapter 30, Money, Growth and Inflation. Remember, this is a book of Gregory Mankiw, Principles of Economics. So first, suppose that this year's money supply is 500 billion, nominal GDP is 10 trillion, and real GDP is 5 trillion. What is the price level? What is the velocity of money? So first, let's put the things in order. So we have the money supply, which is 500 billion. On the other side, we have the nominal GDP, which is 10 trillion. And we have the real GDP, 5 trillion. Taking into account the velocity of money, this equation that we verified throughout the chapter, that the velocity times the money supply is exactly equal to the price times the real GDP, the production, we're going to rearrange and solve for P. When we solve for P, this Y goes to the other side, dividing, and we can express like that. As you can see, we have here, well, this is the notation, and then we already have the M, we have the output, however we don't have the velocity. But what about if we take this thing? We know that the real GDP is exactly equal to the nominal GDP discounted by prices. So then the prices can be expressed as nominal GDP over real GDP, which is kind of the deflator. So 10 trillion over 5 trillion, the trillions cancel out, and we finish with P equal to 2. We have this equation, so then the velocity is exactly, well, actually rearranging this one, just this M going here down, we have P times Y over M, so 2 times 5 trillion over 500 billion. So then we have 10 trillion over 500 billion. So here we have velocity is this one, and 1000 billion is exactly equal to 1 trillion. So if we multiply this 10 trillion by 1000, we're going to get that in billion. So then we have billion and billion. So we can cancel them out and we finish with a velocity of 20. What does it mean? Basically, it means that each dollar must change of hands 20 times in a year. B. Suppose that velocity is constant and the economy's output of goods and services rises by 5% each year. What will happen to nominal GDP and the price level next year if the Fed keeps the money supply constant? So we have the V remains the same. The real GDP 1 is 5 trillion. If we increase this value by 5%, we're going to get 5.25 trillion. And then the price is equal to this. This is the equation of quantity of money. So we know that the velocity will remain constant, the M will remain constant, and due to this real GDP increased, it is expected a decrease of price. Let's see. So we have velocity is the 20 that we have already found out, 500 billion, which is the money supply, it was provided before, and then this is the second real GDP. When we compute that, we end with 10,000 billion over 5.25 trillion. Remember, 1,000 billion is equal to 1 trillion, so we have 10 trillion is exactly equal to 10,000 billion over 5.25, so we cancel out this trillion and we end up with a price level of 1.9048. As you can see, is lower than 2, as we saw here as predicted. So then, what money supply should the Fed set next year if it wants to keep the price level stable? So again, we start from the same equation. We know that we have now the real GDP 5.25. We know that velocity is constant. The price is equal to to 2, the price 1. And then the question is, okay, what about M if I want to keep the price level stable? So then we solve for M. So just we put this V over and this Y, it multiplies. And we have M equal P times Y over V. So then we have 2, which is the price level that we want to achieve, 5.25 trillion over 20. Then we multiply these two. Oh, I guess that I did something wrong, right? Because 5.50 times 2 should be 10.50, right? So this over this should be 10,500 billion over 20. We have here that the previous one, M1, was 500, and then the second one should be 10,500 over 20. I don't know what's that, but it's something higher than this. Okay, then what money supply should the Fed set next year if it wants inflation of 10%? So then 10% should be a P2, a level of price of 2.2. The real GDP, we have this one, the velocity 20. So here we have 2.2 times 5.25 over 20. Then hopefully this one is okay. I hope so. So we have 11 times 11.55 trillion over 20. Remember, 1,000 billion is equal to 1 trillion. So we end with 11,550 billion over 20. Then we have an M of 577.5 billion. Second, suppose that changes in bank regulations expand the availability of credit cards so that people need to hold less cash. How does this event affect the demand of money? Well, this is interesting. Why? First, it's important to know that for the purpose of M1 or M2, which is the money supply considered like currency, the most liquidity, the most liquid that we have in the economy, credit cards are not money. This is just deferred payment, but this is kind of indirect use of money, because when you have more credit cards, you are tempted to use them more, and then at the end of the day, you need to take from your deposits to pay these credit cards. So then this, as a consequence, we can think that people will use more money for deposits to pay these credit cards. And then this actually became money. So then we have here in y-axis, which is the value of money. Remember, 1 over p. This is kind of tricky because here when it goes up, it means that you can your dollars are less valuable. Okay, and here we have the quantity of money. So here is the initial equilibrium, 1 over p, and m0. It was the original one. When there is an increase for this money demand, so we can infer that there is a shift of this curve to the right because of increase of this money demand. So it means to the same level of prices, more money required. B. If the Fed does not respond to this event, what will happen to the price level? Well, this is the red curve is the money supply, which is discretionally manipulated by the central bank. This organization is the only one that can move this curve with the process of printing more money throughout the open market operation. So remember, when they buy bonds, they put money into the economy. When they sell, it is the opposite. When they sell, they suck in some way, or they took money from the economy. So here the prices will be lower due to there is a more demand of money, but the quantity of money is exactly the same. So then each dollar will be more valuable because of the scarcity of the cash, of money. Then, if the Fed wants to keep the price stable, what should it do? Basically, this organization can increase the quantity of money, so then the Fed buys bonds until the point of M1 in order to keep the original level of prices 1 over P constant. 3. It is sometimes suggested that the Federal Reserve should try to achieve zero inflation. If we assume that velocity is constant, does this zero inflation goal require that the rate of money growth equals zero? If yes, explain why. If no, explain what the rate of money growth should equal. Well, we have here that the prices are exactly the same. Inflation zero means that the price 1 and price 2 they're exactly the same. Here we have the velocity remain constant. So when this m, we can say it can happen like two things. If this one the output increase, which is the real one, then the m should increase as well to maintain this equation. Other story, if the output remain exactly the same, the m should be exactly the same, the money supply. 4. Suppose that a country's inflation rate increases sharply. What happens to the inflation tax on the holders of money? Well, imagine the situation that the government, instead of make some like taxes to the people, basically what they do, they start to print money. So in order to pay their expenses, so people indirectly should assume this tax. So what happens to the inflation tax? It should be a cost for them. It should be like kind of a tax. Then, why is wealth that is held in saving accounts not subject to a change in the inflation tax? Well, at least in banks, these need to be compensated. So most of the banks, they will offer a higher nominal rates, keeping the real interest rate constant. Then, can you think of any way holders of saving accounts are hurt by the increase in the inflation rate? It could be the case that adjustments take time from the banks, and it could be the case that you have yes, just in the case that you have like the bank takes time to make this adjustment and you lose part of your money because of this increase in the inflation. 5. Let's consider the effects on inflation in an economy composed by only two people, Bob, a grain farmer, and Rita, a rice farmer. Actually, Bob is going to be this one. This guy, I really like it, Bob Marley. And the other one should be Rita. Rita is a famous female Brazilian musician. I really like as well, so I put they should be Bob and Rita. Both always consume equal amounts of rice and beans. In 2016, the price. Oh, okay. I just used. They consume equal amounts of rice and beans, but they are producers. Okay. So then, in this case, we need to verify something else. Let's see what's going on. So then, suppose that in 2017, the price of beans was 2 and the price of rice was 6. What was the inflation? Was Bob better off, worse off, or unaffected by the changes in price? What about Rita? So this is the bean farmer, rice farmer, but important that they consume equal amounts of rice and beans. So then, we have the price of beans 1 is equal to 1, the price rice 1 is equal to 3, the price bean in time 2 in 2017 is 2, and in the rice in 2017 is 6. So we are assuming like the basket is or in the price index, the CPI is composed by one unit of each good. So then the P index or the CPI should be equal to the price of beans and the price of rice, and then this should be the CPI in 2016. So then should be 3 plus 1 should be 4, and the price index in 2017 should be 2 plus 3. Well, actually, not 3. Should be 2 plus 6 should be exactly equal to 8. That's right. This is not this one. This should be 6. Okay. then 8. So the inflation should be the change of this CPI from one year to another one. So then we have P17 minus P16 over P16. Then as a consequence, we have that the overall inflation is 1, which we multiply by 100. So we have an inflation of 100. So actually what happened? This should be better off, but in the case as a farmer, but that's not true because he's a consumer as well. So it should be unaffected. And Maria Rita should be exactly unaffected as well because from one side is compensated for she is compensated for the as producer, but she's like punished as a consumer. So the situation for her is exactly the same. Now the same situation but with 2 and 4. So then the index in 2016 is exactly the same. 2017 should be 6. Now the difference is like the rise increases not to 6 but for 4. So then the inflation of overall economy should be exactly equal to 0.5, which should be 6, 6 or minus 4, which is 6 minus 4. And then we have an inflation of 50%. So what happened to Bob Marley? He's better off because of the bean. And actually because he has an increase of 100% in the price. And then the thing in the rise, maybe in this situation is compensated because the increase is lower. You see that the increase from 3 to 4 is lower percentage, so this guy is better off. What about Rita? Well, from one side she needs to pay 100% more of beans, and her production is just 4 minus 3 over 3, so we have just an increase of 33%, if I'm right, 1 over 3. So then this one, she's worse off. Let's move to other situation. When we have this one, the difference that decrease in the price of in decrease of the prices from for rice. So then we have here 16 exactly the same, 17 we have 3.5, so then the inflation should be 3.5 minus 4 over 4, and then we have an inflation negative, which actually is called deflation. Well, actually this guy is really happy, you see, because actually he will he will sell like a double from 1 to 2, and he will pay lower for the beans. So this, for this case, this is better off, but the situation of Rita is not the situation, because from one side she needs to pay this one higher, the beans, but she will receive 50% less for her harvest. So then at the end of the day, they are more worried about relative prices. The question says what matters more to Bob or Rita, the overall inflation rate of the relative price of rice and beans. Actually, more about relative prices, because as you can see, sometimes the overall inflation was higher, but they were okay, but they suffer when the products that they don't produce, those increase, but your production don't. So they are punished in that case. So then we can see here that they care more about relative prices. Okay, I hope you have learned from these exercises. If you see something that maybe is wrong, naturally it happens. I just resolve the exercises, and sometimes I make mistakes, and I'm more than happy to hear if we have something to change or other way to solve the exercises. Hopefully next video we will see each other again. Bye bye.